Are you ready for spring? Are you ready for warmer weather? And are you ready for garden season? Well, in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you a flip through of my full garden journal from 2025 so you can get lots of fun ideas on your garden and your garden journaling. Hello there, it's Hillary, and welcome back to the Creative Faith YouTube channel. And I'm really excited to be sharing a full flip through of my garden journal from last year. I love gardening. It's something I started in 2023. I started with just a couple pots on our patio, and it has now expanded to several raised beds and a couple arches. And I love gardening. My husband and I love working on it together, and I love documenting it. So this is my garden journal, my garden scrapbook. Of course, any project I start, I end up turning it into a creative faith project, right? So I love though documenting my garden process in here because it is so helpful to be able to look back on what happened, to look back on when I started things, when I planted things, when things died, how much I produced. And so it's really important to document. So I have been looking back on this garden journal, my previous garden journals, as I am preparing for 2026 garden season. And for reference, I live in Oregon. So that is kind of my area where I garden. So that is just a little reference because where you live has such a big impact on gardening. I follow someone online who is in Florida, and it's really cool because she can grow things basically year round. And here in Oregon, we're obviously so much farther north, and that is not the case for us. But really, I think helpful to know for you to know where we are. And so I do have previous garden journal setup videos and flip through videos, and they're actually listed in here inside this garden journal. So I have a 2023 garden journal setup and a full flip through, a 2024 setup and a full flip through, and then I do have a 2025 setup, and now you're watching the full 2025 garden journal flip through. And so you can get these Creative Faith Garden Journals on Amazon. They come in various sizes. And so I'll have these linked in the description box below if you want to pick one up. I love using the A5 size. I think it is a really great size to be able to print photos and add notes and things, but it's also small enough to, just bring outside and bring with me in the car and whatnot. So I love journaling in an A5 size. So that is what this is. But of course, you can pick up the other sizes if those work better for you. And I love how my garden journals came together. There's lots of spreads in here and charts in here and trackers in here that are super helpful for gardening. So I'll show you a flip through of what my full journal looks like. And I do also have a printable in the Creative Faith Etsy shop that is a gardening printable that has the peppers and the carrots and the tools. So I'll link that printable down below. And then I also used a few other printables in here that I'll mention as well, like my spring mugs printable. And then these were a couple pictures from, or at least this one was, from 2024 that I just really loved and wanted to have in the front. So I love my little cover page with lots of fun inspiration. And I put the little gardening gloves that come in that printable I mentioned on the This Journal Belongs To page. And then here's a little note from me to you. And I did start, I started my first garden in spring of 2023. And I was so excited because it was my first spring where we had our own home. We bought our home at the end of 2022. And so, spring 2023, I was so excited, but also super overwhelmed because it is kind of overwhelming to learn about gardening, especially when I didn't really, you know, I just don't really have a ton of knowledge about gardening. But I just started with a few pots and a few things, and then each year I've grown and learned more. And every single year, you grow and you learn, both physically growing things and also just growing in the gardening journey. And there's just so many lessons to learn from gardening as well. And then here is a little table of contents. So it's broken up into three chunks essentially. There's pre-garden planning, garden season tracking and updates, and then end of season reflections. So I have section number 1, pre-garden planning, love decorating it. The favorite places to get seeds and plants. And then I have a big list of seeds that I have. I am kind of pondering turning this into like some sort of Excel spreadsheet that I could just print in here. So I am kind of pondering making this a little bit easier for myself to track on my computer. But for now, this works perfectly fine. So I just have what I purchased, also seeds that I saved, what I purchased in 2025. That's the list of seeds I have page. I also love making a garden setup to-do list. So things to do to get everything ready to go in the spring. And this is really fun to put together. I cannot wait to make a new one for this year. A garden mood vision goals board. So this is really fun to go on Pinterest and find photos for, personal use and print them off and add them to my journal. Be sure you are following me over on Pinterest because I love sharing there. So I do have a whole board for gardening that you can check out. But it's cool because some of these things, like my husband built us a picnic table last year, so that was really fun to have our picnic table and our hammock. I really wanted to get a new firewood set up, and that didn't happen, but maybe this year. And so, yeah, just neat to see how I like it for herbs. I ended up buying a black 3-tier metal stand on Amazon that we use for our herb things, versus this is kind of a little ladder. But quite honestly, now looking at this, I'm like, those herbs are going to outgrow those teeny little pots very quickly. So, anyways, I just love like going on Pinterest and gathering inspiration. So, that is always a fun page to make. I, of course, start every project, including the garden, with a prayer. I also love writing down different Bible verses that are about gardening and growing. So, that's really fun to include in my garden journal. And then also love gathering quotes on Pinterest and Instagram about gardening. And I love this. The world needs more people who befriend the weeds and believe that healing begins at home. Rosemary Gladstar on Instagram. So fun to have all sorts of little quotes and inspiration. And I love the song Flowers by Samantha Ebert. If you haven't heard it, I highly recommend going and checking that out. And these are flowers from my Saved by Grace printable. And here's our little brainstorm for the garden. I do have another page that's garden layout ideas, but I ended up just using the brainstorm basically as the final. It was the rough draft and final draft. I did add marshmallow here. I love having like vegetables and flowers, but also I love having herbs as well. I think it's so amazing that God made so many things that are perfect for healing. So, love having herbs in our garden. And this is, I think, also from the Saved by Grace flower printable. And then I also love making a list of things I need to buy for the garden as well. And then I have the big expense tracker, so I can kind of keep track of what I'm spending. But it's also really neat because, like, a lot of these things we don't need to rebuy. Like, I don't think we really need to buy any terracotta pots this year because the herbs I planted in them are still growing, and then the pots, I have kind of started to max out our area. So, like that, I don't have to rebuy. And the plant stand, I obviously don't have to rebuy. All the picnic table wood and the bird bath and the umbrella, like so all this stuff besides the plant starts, I really don't need to repurchase. So it's nice because, and even the plant starts, like our strawberries, we don't need to rebuy. Our herbs, we don't need to rebuy. So it's pretty neat that, each year your garden kind of gets more established and you don't have to spend as much. And just a few gardening tips. I'd love to kind of expand on this page more this year. I have some gardening books that I have, and then also books to get. And then a few favorite gardening accounts to follow on Instagram, as well as I love following people who share about herbs. And of course, though, it's really good to just take into account, like I was talking with a friend from church where we get all of our starts from her, and we were talking about one of these Instagram accounts, and I was talking about how like her beds are really full and just how different it is because we had planted a few things too close together so they didn't yield as much because the soil and the plants were fighting for nutrients in the soil. And so it was really interesting because I didn't bring up any certain Instagram person, but my friend did. And she said, her point, like that account is trying to sell you seeds and things. And so it's just interesting to think about like the person behind the account and the business behind the account and the purpose of what they're sharing and growing, and making sure too that you're getting advice from people who are in your same gardening zone, right? Because advice from someone from Florida is going to be totally different than someone from Oregon. So, anyways, it was just a really interesting, or even we were talking about buying seeds. And I bought some seeds last year from a garden shop, but it was a garden shop that mostly sells plants. Seeds aren't necessarily their specialty. And so it's just interesting to think about like, that store, their goal is to get you to buy their plants, not their seeds. And so our seeds didn't do well. And it was just interesting. It's always interesting to think about these types of things. So yeah, just a little bit of interesting tidbit. And I showed out a few different favorite plant combinations. So now we're into section 2. Section 2 is during the garden season, tracking and updates. I use a garden printable to decorate. And then these are my favorite Avery removable tabs. I love these. So here's my chart of when planted and updates. And I was really good about, the first fruit and when I planted them. But I definitely should have been better about updating more than I did. So I need to be just better about documenting in my little chart. I do have like pictures of a lot of things, so I want to go back and check out the pictures and update the dates of things. But here's a good, at least generic idea of when we planted all of these different things and when like here were first fruit, first flowers. So good reference for me for this year. Then we had Pest Tracker. Again, this I should have been better about updating because we definitely had more pests than this. But I'm also kind of learning that it's okay to have pests, and if your soil is healthy, that the ecosystem in the garden should kind of take care of them. So I do want to be, just more kind of aware of not spraying for pests and things quite as much as we have in the past. We spray them with like neem oil and, natural things, but I think that's good. It was just interesting to watch some YouTube videos and think about, there are pests and, instead of fearing the pests, trust that there's also the good bugs to help take care of them, which I think is a really interesting perspective. I love this page. I needed to also expand more on this. Favorite herb and tea combinations. This is my purple teacup printable, and I love this. The world needs more people who stir healing into simple cups of tea. And that's another quote from Rosemary Gladstar. I loved that quote. And I love tea. Beautiful time with the Lord and His Word. So I definitely want to expand more on my knowledge of gathering herbs and using them for teas and things like that. But I love lemon balm, I love lavender, we have peppermint, and I know this year that all of them will do even better than they did last year, their first year in our garden. And I took a few pictures of birds. I would love to kind of expand on this and write down the names of the birds that we have in our garden. And fertilization and soil amendment log. This is another thing that I should have been better about tracking. But we just kind of add chicken manure and seaweed powder. It's just kind of what we throw in our garden. I'm sure there's more and better things we can and should do, but that's what we got. And then pruning and maintenance log. This is another thing that I should be better about documenting, but it was really good because as I was flipping through this, I was like, oh my goodness, I forgot to prune the lavender. So my husband and I worked on that this weekend. So that's why it's good to keep track of these things. Next, we have monthly and weekly garden updates. So, what I do for this is there's enough pages to do a spread for March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So, I did 8 spreads that you could have. So, I just put the months in the middle and then I printed off photos and then documented. So, this is kind of the real scrapbooky part. And I love how these pages turned out. So you can see March through October. And so yeah, I just print photos and some of the pages I decorated also with printables. But I print photos and I try to put the date with them and document what happened. And I love looking back through this. I also have some different heart printables. So that is, well, it's one printable called Hearts, and it has hearts in all different colors, but I love using that to decorate my pages. So, really fun to look back on all these memories. This one was even, I had so many things. I made a little tip out using a note card. So, May is when we plant everything in, or when we get our plant starts from our friend, and when we put them in the ground in our raised beds and whatnot. So, really fun to look back on that. In June, things are starting to bloom and harvest, and super, super pretty season in the garden. July, it was fun to have my husband's family visiting last year in July and getting to spend time with them in the garden. And then, yeah, I started harvesting things. Tomatoes were appearing, and peas were appearing, and blueberries. So, really fun to look back and get excited for the next year, the coming year of when things will grow. September is always such a fun time in the garden. And October, things are wrapping up. These are the last days when I would sit outside. So now we're to end of the season reflection. So you can see I use that hearts printable to decorate this page. So I have garden and yard projects completed. We got the picnic, well, by we, my husband got the picnic table built. And we got the 3rd raised bed built and used. So that was what we did last year. And this page were all my different lessons learned from the garden. And it's so good to really document and ponder. And yeah, so I love being able to look back on this and all the different lessons that we learned. Future garden, garden garden and yard plans. So we really need to redo our fence. That's something I am not looking forward to, but something that needs to be done because it's literally falling over. And I'd love to build a fountain. I don't think that's going to happen this year because just any money that we have extra in our lives is going to be going towards this fence. But that is a goal sometime. And eventually we should get new patio furniture probably, but definitely just going to make do with what we have this year. And then this past year we found a metal butterfly at the thrift store. And if you've seen any of my garden pictures, you've seen it on one of our arches, and I love it. And then we also, from another thrift store, got a concrete bunny last year, and I just loved like these really whimsical, fun elements and so I'd love to add more. My parents for Christmas gave me a little garden stake that's a hummingbird, but just little things like that to make the garden fun and cute. And then things that we want to try this year, so that we were journaling about at the end of last year, we really want to try potatoes, sweet potatoes and regular potatoes. So we got some grow bags for that. Grapes and apples, it's not going to happen, but we might try carrots, maybe big pumpkins. And then I was thinking about adding echinacea and maybe hyssop, because we do have 2 extra pots that I might want to add maybe a couple herbs, but we're kind of running out of room in our garden unless we just totally take out the grass in our yard. But so much I would love to grow. And then here are some before and after photos. I need to be better. Like, I took before photos of everything, but like I'm realizing I don't have an after of this raised bed. So definitely need to be better about that this year. And like I don't think I took a before photo of this arch last year. But that's all right. We will work on. I feel like I'm okay about documenting. I say as I have a pretty much blank chart, but things just get so crazy, right, in life, and so it's hard to keep up with documenting everything. But we only got like a few squash and a few pumpkins, and again, I think that's because we planted like along our hog fence arch. It's like maybe 4 feet. We planted like 4 pumpkins plus a squash per side, and you're supposed to plant them like evidently 3 to 6 feet apart from each other. I think they're competing for nutrients. So hopefully this year we'll get more yield off of fewer plants is the goal. And then we have recipe and preservation ideas. So definitely this year hoping to print more photos of the different recipes that we did. And then be better about gifting people things and writing it down. But it was fun in October to be able to gift people some little bouquets from our zinnias. And a prayer of gratitude for the growing season. And then in additional notes, I loved the spread that I made last year with all the different herbs we have in the garden and what they're good for. I might copy these over into my new garden journal. And this page I definitely could have expanded on, but benefits of flowers in the garden. I love this page. Favorite moments outside. So definitely add that to your garden journal. And then this was just a big list of perennials, and I love the idea of focusing on perennials, things that will come back each year versus annuals that are only good for one season. So you definitely get more for your money with planting perennials. And then as I was working on finishing up this journal at church today, I met with my friend who we get all of our starts from, and she's just so full of knowledge. So I was taking notes about why our San Marzano tomatoes didn't really work and our beets didn't work and the squash situation. So it was really good. Definitely find a friend who gardens that you can chat with and get advice from. It is so much fun to learn from her. She's such a wealth of knowledge about gardening, and so I was taking these notes here, but I actually wished I would have wrote them in my new garden journal. So stay tuned. I'll probably do a setup video for this new garden journal. If you guys would want to see it, let me know in the comments below. So I have started in here getting things thought out. We're at kind of the overwhelming part where it's like, okay, what do we want to grow? What should we grow? And this is where I really need to just like pause and pray and talk to God about all this, right? And ask Him, like, Lord, where do you want us to invest our time and money this year in the garden? And ask Him, and He will lead us. So, really excited for the new garden season, and I hope this video gave you some ideas on what you can document in your garden journal. And be sure to pick up a Creative Faith garden journal. I made these because I wanted a place to have everything documented. I love all the charts that I made and whatnot. I think they're super helpful if you're a gardener. And I hope this video encourages you and inspires you to start a garden, even if you just have one pot on your porch. I really want to encourage you to grow something because God's going to use it to teach you so much. So thank you for being here. Be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and the bell notification so you don't miss out on any Creative Faith videos. Comment below if you garden. I would love to know that. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, friend!